Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching The World Report. Let's first take a look at the headlines. US officials say that Russia may have been responsible for downing an Azerbaijan Airlines plane on Christmas Day that killed 38 people. The Kremlin says that Putin has apologised to the Azerbaijani president over the phone after the deadly crash. Israeli forces have reportedly raided the Kamal Adwan hospital in northern Gaza, the region's last operating medical facility. Israel denied the claims, including that part of the hospital has been set on fire. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky claims that North Korean soldiers are being left unprotected on the Russian front line. US officials revealed that thousands of North Koreans have been killed or injured so far in the Russia-Ukraine war. China has revealed a new amphibious assault ship amid ongoing tensions with the US over Taiwan. The addition is seen as a key asset in advancing China's naval forces. In recent updates on the Azerbaijan plane crash, Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke with Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev on Saturday, apologising for the crash of Azerbaijan Airlines Flight 8243 in Kazakhstan. The Kremlin explained that Russian air defence systems were active when the plane tried to land at Grozny Airport. However, the situation was complicated by Ukrainian drone strikes in nearby cities and dense fog at Grozny, which reduced visibility. US officials and an Azerbaijani minister have raised concerns that Russian air defences may have mistakenly downed the flight in response to a Ukrainian drone strike, possibly with a surface-to-air missile. While American intelligence has not confirmed this theory, Azerbaijan Airlines' preliminary investigation cited external interference, placing scrutiny on Russia's Pantsir S-1 air defence systems. In response, Azerbaijan Airlines has suspended flights to several Russian cities. Meanwhile, the bodies of 4 victims, along with 7 injured passengers, have been transported to Baku, where a day of mourning was declared. Citizens continue to pay tribute at the Baku Memorial, leaving flowers in honour of the victims. Survivors, including flight attendants and passengers, Subenokov Ramikov, described hearing strange noises and feeling as if something struck the plane. Investigations are ongoing with cooperation from Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan and Russia. We're joined by a guest to talk through this. We are speaking to Raymond Vickery, a junior former US Assistant Secretary of Commerce. Raymond Vickery, thank you so much for joining us today. The impact of this plane crash is being felt not just in Eastern Europe, but across the world. In terms of the US statements that have come out, I'd like to speak to you specifically about what impact this might have and really what we're hearing from across the ocean in terms of what the US have found about the crash.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I want to say that this shows the stupidity of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. When you have ongoing hostilities like this, there are bound to be mistakes. Thank God this wasn't a mistake of nuclear proportions. But it could have been. Prime Minister Modi of India has said that this is not a time for war, and that is exactly right, and this incident shows why that is true. It seems to me clear at this point that since there is an apology from President Putin, that what happened here was a downing of a civilian aircraft with air defense systems from Russia. As a person who follows U.S.-India relations, I think it may be appropriate for India to consider its reliance on Russian S-400 for its air defense. These are the kinds of mistakes that can be tragic overall. I note that the opposition party in Azerbaijan has called for and into the war, and made it very plain that they believe that this is connected to the ongoing hostilities. It's doubly ironic, of course, that this plane was on its way to Chechnya, of course, the area in which Vladimir Putin first made his reputation as a very hard-handed person who will resort to violence in order to be able to solve almost any problem. So this is once again an illustration that there is a need to bring peace and stability to this area of the world rather than continuing on with this senseless war.
I'd like to focus back in on the air defence system that's been used. For our audience, do you think this incident is something that is an error with the systems, or is it an individual error or an error by a military unit?
Well, of course, you have to have a complete investigation to be able to determine that. But it is apparent that Russian technology in many areas, while it is quite advanced, also in terms of the air defense and other technical systems, is not of the highest quality. So for a country like India to be reliant on a system such as the S-400 raises technical as well as human error kinds of questions. So we'll probably never know what the interplay was between the personnel operating the system and the technologies of it. But if I were in Indian policymakers' shoes, I'd certainly want to take another look at what it is relying on and spending indeed many hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in terms of a Russian air defense system.
Looking at the lives that have been lost, if we find out that it is indeed a Russian air defence system, which seems likely based on the evidence that we've been presented in the reports, but of course we will wait for that final verdict. Do you think that the lives that have been lost are almost more significant than the lives that are being lost in the Russia-Ukraine areas, just because these people weren't directly involved in the fighting, they weren't involved in the conflict, their nations weren't? And do you think that will have bigger ramifications for the geopolitical stance on this war now that lives have been lost of people who aren't fighting?
Well, it certainly should have that kind of impact. This is not the first time this has happened. You may recall that there was an earlier airline that was shot down over Ukraine by Russian technology. It wasn't exactly clear who was operating it at the time. But it does show that the idea that you can just have a war between Russia and Ukraine and that it won't have ramifications overall is wrong. Already you have to divert flights that ordinarily would have gone straight from Europe to India because of these hostilities. So I think that this is an indication that innocent people having nothing to do with the invasion itself are put at risk. And it just doesn't stop just with Azerbaijan and Central Asia. It goes around the world. So this is the time to follow what Prime Minister Modi has said, that this is not a time for war. This is a time to get back to the rule of law and finding other ways in which to compete. Part of the problem, of course, here is that President Putin is of the old-time view that national greatness is achieved by controlling other people's territory, that you go in and you take it over, and that makes you great, as Alexander the Great, as indeed the whole theory of imperialism. So imperialism doesn't stop with just one dispute over territory. It is an infection which spreads and affects people around the globe, and those who have nothing to do with the conflict itself.
Do you think that Donald Trump coming into power on the 20th of January next year will have an impact on Putin's view and Putin's plans? Do you think Trump can be the antithesis to those plans, or at least get closer to forging some form of peace between Russia and Ukraine?
Well, one hopes, and hope springs eternal, that having some change in terms of who is involved will help bring about a reassessment of the situation. My view is, however, that Putin is not going to be deterred by Donald Trump. In fact, I think it's just the opposite. I believe that Putin, from his previous experience, believes that Trump is a person to be manipulated because of his own interest in Russia and in other ways. So yes, I'm hopeful that that this will be a way to build some sort of off-ramp for hostilities. But already we've seen backtracking in the United States from President-elect Trump. He was saying that as soon as he was elected, he was going to stop this war, and we have yet to see anything that has come out of that. Indeed, he now talks about how difficult it is to fulfill some of the statements that he made during the campaign. So yes, let's hope for the best. Let's hope that these two personalities will make some change. But I very much am skeptical of that, because it is not a case that Putin is going to listen to Trump. Oh, yes, well, we'll reconsider our view of how it is that I get to be Putin the Great, as opposed to just another in a line of dictators that have come to power around the world. So yes, there's room for hope, but the signs are that it's going to take a concerted effort, not just from the United States and Trump, but from India, from Prime Minister Modi, from NATO, and the United Nations, in order to be able to put back together some semblance of the rule of law in Eastern Europe.
Raymond Vickery, thank you so much for joining us. We will, of course, continue to bring you the latest updates on the plane crash, but also the ongoing conflict with the war between Russia and Ukraine. Our next top story tonight is coming from Gaza, where the situation at the Kamal Adwan hospital has taken a dire turn. Claims of Israeli troops setting fire to parts of the facility have emerged, raising serious humanitarian concerns. Meanwhile, the arrest of key civil defence leaders and the tragic loss of lives in airstrikes only deepen the crisis. Here are the latest updates.
A grave situation is unfolding in Gaza, where Kamal Adwan Hospital, one of the last functioning medical facilities in the northern region, has been severely impacted. However, the Israeli Defense Forces have disputed these allegations, stating that only a small fire broke out in an empty building, which they claim was not caused by Israeli gunfire. Despite this, Gaza's health ministry has reported that fires inside the hospital are still raging. The hospital's director, Hussam Abu Safia, has alleged that Israeli forces evacuated medical staff and displaced people before setting fire to the hospital's operating departments, while people remained inside. In another development, the director of the Palestinian Civil Defense in northern Gaza, Ahmed Hassan al-Karlaut, has been arrested by Israeli forces. The deputy health minister condemned Israel's actions as part of a broader campaign against humanitarian efforts.
ثالثاً نناشد المجتمع الدولي والمنظمات الإنسانية بالتحرك الفوري لوقف هذه الانتهاكات الجسيمة ضد المنشآت الصحية وكوادرها والمدنيين والمرضى المنومين بها، ونطالب بتفعيل حقيقي للقانون الدولي الإنساني في مثل هذه الحالات.
The Iranian government has strongly condemned the Israeli military's actions at Kamal Adwan Hospital, calling it a war crime and a violation of international law. Meanwhile, in the Maghazi refugee camp, a strike by Israeli forces on a home has resulted in the deaths of 9 people, including a 12-year-old schoolgirl who was preparing for her exams. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's now head to North America for the latest breaking news updates. President-elect Donald Trump has asked the US Supreme Court to delay a ban on TikTok while he seeks a political solution. The law requires TikTok's owners, ByteDance, to sell the app or face a ban by January the 19th. US lawmakers have raised concerns about the app's ties to the Chinese government, which ByteDance denies. Despite legal challenges, no buyer has been found for TikTok. The Supreme Court will decide whether to delay the ban before it takes effect. Beloved actress Olivia Hussey, known for her iconic role as Juliet in Franco Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, has passed away at the age of 73. Her family shared the heartbreaking news on her official Instagram. They stated she passed peacefully at home, surrounded by loved ones, on November the 27th. Hussey's career spanned decades. She became a celebrated screen queen for her roles in horror classics like Black Christmas and Psycho 4: The Beginning. Supporters of incoming President Donald Trump clashed online over a visa program for skilled workers. Vivek Ramaswamy, chosen by Trump to cut government spending, blamed American culture for driving companies to hire foreign workers. He argued that foreign workers help the US economy. However, his post faced backlash from Trump supporters against immigration. Ramaswamy clarified, saying the H-1B system is broken and should be replaced. Canadian ministers met with key US President-elect Donald Trump nominees in Florida on Friday. Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc and Foreign Minister Melanie Joly spoke with Trump's nominees for Commerce and Interior Secretaries. The talks centred on the threat of a 25% tariff that the US has imposed potentially on Canadian imports. Trump has said he will impose the tariff if migration and fentanyl issues are not addressed. The ministers presented Canada's $994 million border plan to strengthen border security and fight fentanyl trade. Mexican authorities have found 12 bodies in clandestine graves in Chihuahua state. The graves were discovered in Ascension municipality near the US border. Officials found 11 graves with 12 skeletons. They have been sent to Ciudad Juarez for identification and investigation. This discovery adds to Mexico's ongoing problem with missing people. With around 120,000 people unaccounted for, drug cartels and criminal gangs are often behind these disappearances. Mexico is developing a mobile app for migrants. It will alert relatives and consulates if they are at risk of being detained by US immigration. The move responds to President-elect Donald Trump's deportation plans after his inauguration. The app is in small-scale testing and is working well. Users can press a button to send alerts to family members and the nearest consulate. US authorities are obliged to give notice to home country consulates when a foreign citizen is detained. In a new development from South Korea, prosecutors have revealed that suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol authorised the military to use force to enter parliament. Meanwhile, acting President Han Duck-soo has also been impeached. Here are the latest updates.
South Korea's suspended president, Yoon Suk-yeol, reportedly authorised the military to use force to enter parliament during his failed martial law attempt, according to a prosecutor's report from December 28th. The 10-page summary claims Yoon intended to declare martial law 3 times on December 3rd. Yoon, stripped of his duties by the National Assembly, faces investigation for undermining civilian rule. leading to his impeachment. His lawyer dismissed the report as biased. In a separate development, South Korea's National Assembly impeached acting President Han Duck-soo on Friday, following Yoon's impeachment. Han, who took office after Yoon, faced opposition for not completing the impeachment process.
국무총리 한덕수 탄핵 소추안은 총투표수 192표 중 가 192표로서 가결됐음을 선포합니다.
Chaos erupted in Parliament during the impeachment vote. Lawmakers from Yoon and Han's ruling People Power Party protested after the National Assembly Speaker, Woo Won-shik, announced that only 151 votes would be needed to impeach Han, unlike the 200 votes required for Yoon's impeachment. This is what the opposition leader had earlier stated.
오늘 저희 민주당은 국민의 명령에 따라 한덕수 국무총리를 탄핵합니다. 국가 유지를 위한 헌법기관 구성을 미루며 헌정 질서를 파괴하고 또 다른 국헌 문란 행위를 이어가고 있습니다.
In response to the impeachment, PPP members chanted protests like invalid and abuse of power, with most of them boycotting the vote. Bureau Report, NewsX.
We'll now look at the top stories coming out of the continent of Europe. A Norwegian shipping firm denied Dmitry Medvedev, the deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council's claims that the firm's vessel ignored a sinking Russian cargo ship. This ship was in the Mediterranean Sea. The Ursa Major, linked to Russia's defence ministry, sank on Monday after 3 explosions. Spain's Maritime Rescue Service intervened, saving 14 out of 16 crew members after receiving a distress signal. The ship owner called it an act of terrorism. On Friday, Moldova announced that it will curb the power exports. It will also implement measures to reduce consumption by 1/3, starting from January the 1st. Moldova is preparing to end Russian national gas supplies. The country has been bracing for possible power cuts after Ukraine announced it would not renew a gas transit agreement with Russia's Gazprom, set to expire on December the 31st. Moldovan President Maia Sandu accused Gazprom of fueling an energy crisis by refusing to deliver gas via an alternative route. The US-sanctioned Georgian billionaire and ex-Prime Minister Bidzina Ivanishvili is accused him of undermining democracy and aiding Russia. Ivanishvili, who built his fortune in Russia, has shifted Georgia away from the West, blaming foreign intelligence for inciting conflict with Moscow. Critics claim his Georgian Dream Party has fostered authoritarianism and closer ties to Russia. Bosnia's security minister Nenad Nesic and 6 other people were arrested on Thursday on charges of organised crime. This included money laundering, abusing office and accepting bribes. The state prosecutor and Bosnia's interior ministry in the autonomous Serb Republic have been probing corruption at the public company where Nesic served as general manager from 2016 to 2020. Miladin Lucic, a member of Nesic's party, was also arrested for abusing office while serving as a municipal deputy. Moldovan parliament, controlled by pro-Western lawmakers, approved a 10-year defence strategy on Thursday. It aims to increase defence spending as part of the country's EU accession plan. The pro-Russian opposition dismissed the strategy as unnecessary given Moldova's small size and limited military. The plan, presented by Defence Minister Anatoly Nasati, targets boosting defence spending by 1% of GDP by 2030. German police have searched 10 residences linked to 4 suspected members. These members were of a right-wing youth group. They were arrested for attacking the Social Democratic Party's election campaigners at bus stops. Items seized included mobile devices, propaganda and balaclavas. The raids, conducted in Lower Saxony, Saxony and Saxony-Anhalt, targeted 8 suspects aged 16 to 21 connected to the attack. A man named Robert Brooks was fatally beaten in a New York prison on December the 9th. He was pronounced dead the next morning after the assault. He was repeatedly pummeled by the correction officers while in handcuffs. The brutal details of the assault have been revealed through a body camera footage made public by the state's Attorney General. Brooks, who is black, had been serving a 12-year prison sentence for first-degree assault in 2017. This chilling incident yet again draws attention to two issues in American society: the entrenched racism and critical need for oversight and transparency within correctional institutions. Here's the report.
Disturbing bodycam footage from New York resurfaces on the internet. On Friday, footage released by New York Attorney General Letitia James shows correctional officers fatally beating inmate Robert Brooks at Marcy Correctional Facility. Brooks was announced dead by a hospital the next morning after the assault. In the footage, the officers can be seen shoving something inside Brooks' mouth, punching and kicking him, while his face is covered in blood. Brooks can also be seen lying on a hospital bed, pinned down by several guards. He was even dragged off the bed by his collar. Brooks had been serving a 12-year prison sentence for first-degree assault since 2017. He had arrived at the Marcy Correctional Facility only hours before the beating, after being transferred from another nearby state prison. Following an internal review, New York Governor Kathy Hochul ordered the firing of the 13 officers and a prison nurse who were involved in the assault. The Correctional Association of New York, a prison oversight group, said it had documented reports of pervasive brutality and racism inside the Marcy Correctional Facility during a monitoring visit 2 years ago. Police brutality specifically against blacks in New York is an ongoing issue which has been going on for years. In fact, in 2014, Black Lives Movement expanded after the police killings of two unarmed black men, Eric Garner and Michael Brown. In May 2020, George Floyd, an unarmed black man, was also pronounced dead after a Minneapolis police officer knelt on Floyd's neck despite his repeated protests that he could not breathe. While assault on Brooks, Floyd, and many others raised the question of continuous police brutality against blacks, the Brooks incident specifically serves as a grim reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by inmates, a critical need for oversight and transparency within correctional institutions. Bureau Report, NewsX.
That is all we have time for. We'll be back soon with more of the latest breaking news updates from across the world.